Okay, amazing. Let's jump in, Be'ezras Hashem. Thank you to those who are joining on Zoom, on Facebook, and those who will be watching the recording later, Be'ezras Hashem. We jump back into Yichud HaHisbodedus B'siyata Dishmaya, and we are taking a look at page Ayin, Ois Dalid in this essay, where we continue our learning, which we've been doing for the last 2 or 3 weeks, on the topic of a kind of Hisbodedus which we try to capture with the word Hineini. A personal prayer where a person shows up without their own personal interests, without their own personal requests, not coming to Hisbodedus because we have something particular to ask for, but rather coming into the space of personal prayer just to declare, I'm here. Just to say, Hashem, I'm here for whatever you need me for, which is a completely different thing. And this was, if you remember, what we discussed and explained in the pasuk where David HaMelech says, Ani avdecha ben amasecha. Hashem, I am your servant, the son of your maidservant. And we spoke about a person who's born into slavery, a person who, it's not that they were once free and now they're enslaved. They don't even know what it means to be free, meaning their whole identity is bound up with this, that they're here to serve. And we spoke last week about that concept of, or 2 weeks ago rather, because I wasn't sure last week, 2 weeks ago, about the concept of really mesiras nefesh, about a person whose whole identity is defined by their being given over to Hashem's purposes, and to really recognize, like, I'm here in this world on a mission. I don't have my own personal considerations. I'm here to do the best that I can, given the tools that I have, given my own mind, my own heart, given my own unique abilities and circumstances that's for each one of us, to be able to say to Hashem, how can I be of service to you? Hineini. And that's the kind of Hisbodedus that we've been describing and discussing over the last few weeks. And we jump back into Ois Dalid over here, where the tzaddik says the following thing. Derech ha'olam yamim mikedem. The way of the world, at least in ancient times, or former times, not necessarily ancient, but a few hundred years ago, im ki hayoim ein ze noah kol kach, even though today it's a whole different culture and the way that we live is completely different, but the way that it used to be is she'ishtoi shel seicher, the wife of a merchant, the merchant's wife would accompany him to all the various places where he went for the purpose of trying to make a living. That was what they had to do. It wasn't like today, where a person has a place of work per se. If a person was a merchant, they were traveling constantly. And they were constantly going from one fair to another fair, buying wares and merchandise, and then getting to another place where they could sell those wares. And this is what they needed to do. There was no other way. When the ship would anchor in a faraway place to which they were traveling for the purpose of parnasa and making a living, how did the merchant know how he's going in this new place? How is he's going to be able to manage to find food and seda as something to support himself with? His whole purpose in this place, they're not taking a vacation. They didn't like go online and there was no internet obviously, but they're not it's not they're not there to spend time there. They're there to do business, but he needs to eat. He needs to find a place where he could rest. Okay, therefore Bibayim, when they arrived in this particular place, this new city or this new country, they would immediately try to look out, where's there an inn or a hotel somewhere where we could stay. And then they would just drop all their things. The wife would stay behind, and he would go out immediately to the fair, and he would go out to the marketplace and to be involved in mischar and schairis and merchandise and buying and selling mekach umemkar. In the meantime, the wife who would travel along with the merchant would go out and to try to converse with the neighbors to find out, okay, where can I buy, some food. V'achanuyos, where are the stores? Lahasig lechem v'yerek, where can I buy some bread? Where can I buy some vegetables? And mazon, and different kinds of food. Lahachin tavshil, to prepare a soup, to prepare a stew. Ubeshuva be'erev, when her husband, the merchant, would come back from a day of haggling and negotiating and buying and selling. When he came back to the place where they were staying, on account of his wife, who spent the day finding out like how they're going to eat, because it wasn't like in the old days they couldn't just do Uber Eats and have some meal shipped to them. They had to prepare the food, and that was the job of the wife who would stay in the hotel, and that was her chelik of it. Now v'yesh, there were times where shayikam l'machar, he would wake up the next morning, mishes bar loike ein amakim toiv l'schaira, and let's say it would become clear to him that this is not really a good place to do business, and he thought that they would be able to make some deals here, but for whatever reason, it's just not as amenable to his business as he thought it would be. V'hichlet, and the husband decides lahaflig omadinas acheres. Now the wife doesn't really know anything about this stuff because that's not her chelek. She's not involved in the business part of things. So that's his decision. Because he knows that for the purposes of making parnasa, being able to put food on their table, they need to travel from here. They need to go somewhere else. So he decides lahaflig omadinas acheres, to go and travel to a different country. Now even though his wife had already put in all the effort to get to know the village and to get to know where they can buy eggs and fruits and vegetables and bread, she's already unpacked, she's already sort of arranged themselves to be able to settle there for a few days or maybe a few weeks. All of a sudden she hears, we have to leave this place. This is not a place that's going to be advantageous for their business purposes, and that was the whole point of traveling here. We have to travel away. We have to go to a new place. She does what she's told. To pack up all their things again, anew, and to travel once more to a place that is unrecognizable to them, a new place, a strange place, a foreign place. And over there, everything starts from the outset. It's a brand new place. She has to again start to be mevarer and to clarify where they can buy food. She has to unpack again, get herself adjusted and themselves adjusted to this new place. To begin to inquire and to clarify where she can find the raw materials necessary to be able to prepare the food to sustain her husband and family in this new place. Everything in accordance because of the arrangement, not because of a hierarchy, but just that's the way that it was. That was his role, this was her role. But ultimately, he was the one who was deciding where they'd travel, and he doesn't sort of need to explain himself. She trusts him. She knows that he's not making her crazy for no reason. He knows what's best for the business. And it's up to him where to stay. And it's up to him when to travel. Everything in accordance with what her husband, the merchant, decides. When the years pass, after she's become accustomed to this lifestyle, she stopped asking, where are we going? She stopped clarifying, how long will we stay? When will we travel next? Because she knows her job is to make sure that wherever they go, whenever they get there, all based on his decision with regard to the business, she has a tafkid in that place. Her job, she knows, is to make sure that he has a meal when he comes home, to support and to be able to sustain the children, so that he has the platform on which to be able to try to make themselves enough money, maybe to finally come back home and to settle where they actually live. She knows that. And because she knows that, it's not a question to her so much, the details of where and why and how long, and it's not relevant. He's the one who's making that decision. And she's his partner. And she's there to play her role just like he's playing his role. Wherever it is that he decides needs to be, that role needs to be played. Or those roles need to be played. So she already stopped asking because she knows, her job is to do her part of things in this partnership wherever it is and whenever it is that he decides to settle. She doesn't need to know the program. It's not relevant for her. She trusts her husband. She's his faithful partner. Wherever it is that he decides they need to go, that's where she's going. And that was the arrangement. That's how it was. And of course, we're using this as an example. Today it's a very different cultural dynamic, obviously. But he's using this as an example for us and the Master of Heaven and Earth, for us and Hashem. And in this context, of course, Hashem is the Baal. Hashem is our collective husband, so to speak. And we are the Eishes Chayil. And this is how a Jew who lives in the consciousness of Hineini, a Jew who lives in the consciousness of Ani avdecha ben amasecha, like we described, this is how we live. And the most collective symbol of this was Klal Yisrael at the earliest dawn of our national identity. When we were traveling through the Midbar, Lechtech Achrei B'Midbar Be'eretz Lo Zerua, Hashem says, Acharti L'Chesed Urayich, I remember the love of our youth, the faithfulness of that partnership, how much you relied on me, and how much I relied on you, where you followed me into the Midbar Be'eretz Lo Zerua, into a desolate, uninhabitable place. And that throughout our whole journey in the desert, in the 42 Membes Masa'is, the 42 stops and stations and journeys, says Rav Kluger Shlita, this is the pattern that it followed, like the Psukim very clearly outlined in Parshas Ba'aloischa, where the Psukim say that there is a time when the cloud would travel me'erev ad boiker, from the evening until the morning, and the cloud was there in that place from the evening to the morning, v'nala ha'anam ba'boiker, and then in the morning the cloud lifted v'nisa'u, and then they would travel, or day and night, the cloud was not there, v'nisa'u, and they would travel. Whether it was a day's worth of travel or a few days worth, or whether we travel for a month, all the while until the cloud would descend again. And when the cloud would descend, then they would rest. They would set up camp. And then when the cloud lifted and it was time for them to travel, then they would travel again. This was the consciousness. Nobody tried to clarify among Klal Yisrael, how long are we going to be here? And if we're not going to be here so long, maybe we shouldn't unpack and maybe we shouldn't settle. It was the consciousness of Hineini. This was the level of our connection to Hashem in the Midbar, where we really didn't have our own considerations at all. The whole structure of the travel in the Midbar was literally one of a complete and total, utter reliance. Absolute reliance on Hashem. Al pi Hashem yachanu, al pi Hashem yisau. It was in accordance with Hashem's guidance that we traveled. It was in accordance with Hashem's guidance that we rested. This is called ne'emanos. This is called trust, bitachon. A genuine, authentic partnership that we have with Hashem as the Eishes Chayil. And so Rav Kluger writes over here, he says, Nemanas zu, this trustworthiness, this relationship, he leiv ha-Yehudi la Hashem Yisbarach. This is the pnimius of the heart of each and every Jew, and its connection to Hashem always. Beside in the secret of the deepest layer of our identity, being described by the pasuk Eishes Chayil Ateres Bala, the woman of valor, which is all of us. The whole Klal Yisrael is the Eishes Chayil in relation to Ateres Bala, is the Shechina in relation to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We are bound up as the Eishes Chayil with Ateres Bala. What is an Atara? An Atara is a crown. A crown in Hebrew is Keser. In the deeper Svarim, in the sefer Kabbalah and the sefer Chasidus, the sefer Pnimius, Keser symbolizes Hashem's will, the Ratzon Hashem, what Hashem wants. Memela Eishes Chayil, what it means to be an Eishes Chayil, an Ezer Kenegdai, what it means to be this helpmate, this partner to HaKadosh Baruch Hu Kiviyachol. Nasa Shutef LaKadosh Baruch Hu B'maisa Bereshis, that we partner with Hashem in creation, is to be Ateres Bala, is to be completely aligned with the will of our Baal. This is Isha Kshera, like Chazal say, Oyser Tzan Bala. The collective feminine of all of Knesset Yisrael is to do the will of Hashem. And not only to do the will of Hashem, but to be so identified with that sense of identity, which is totally built on this aspect of bittul, of nullification of our own human sort of personal ambitions and motivations, where our whole definition as a nation is the Ateres Bala, is the crown, so to speak, of our husband, which is the Ratzon Hashem. Shemuchan lakol sheinicheu Hashem Yisbarach. We are ready no matter what. Wherever Hashem chooses, that's where we shall travel. V'yodeya sheyesh la Hashem Yisbarach drachim rabim lahanig ba'olamai. And we know that Hashem has many different ways that He could be manhig the world. And we're ready for it. We're not set and rigid to say this is the only way. Because even though we're not in the midbar anymore and we don't have this clear symbol of the cloud coming down and the cloud lifting to know when we should stop and when we should go, and the cloud and the pillar of fire are no longer leading us as individuals or even nationally as a nation anymore in as clear a way, Hashem still speaks. Hashem still opens doors and Hashem still closes doors. And a person who's set on their own personal ambition, who hasn't clarified that nakuda yet, like we spoke last time, of Hineini to such a deep degree, where ultimately, all I want is ta'ir eretz michveidecha, is that the earth should be illuminated with Hashem's presence, nothing to do with me as an individual. All the while that a person hasn't clarified that, even if on the surface it might look like what they want is to do good and holy things, when things don't go their way, everything falls apart. Because it wasn't really about that ultimate purpose and that ultimate objective. Nimtza, I guess it emerges that really it was just about themselves. And it was never really about Hashem. It was never really about the whole universe, the all of Jewish history, all of human history. It was an ego thing. It was a very religious ego thing. It dressed up, in very frum garments. But if a person falls apart, when that plan falls apart, then who was it really about in the first place? But when a person is connected to this level of consciousness, to this level of bittul, to be given over to this extent, to this degree, Now, obviously, again, still we have a mind and a heart, and Hashem wants all of us to use our own unique talents and to the extent possible to try our best to come, up with the clearest direction that we feel that we're supposed to be headed in, given our own sherish neshama and our own circumstances and so on. But ultimately, when the plan that we think is the plan gets deflected in some way or another, we're going with it. It just means that Hashem's cloud lifted off of our own personal mishkan. It's time to travel again, so travel we will. It takes bitachon. Chesed ne'urayich avas kluloisayich lech teich achrai ba'midbar be'eretz loy zarua. It takes trust. It takes that energy of Hineini, of ani avdecha ben amasecha. To say it doesn't really matter to me where, when, how. Anything that's out of my control is in Hashem's control. Anything that's in my control, I have to do the best that I can to try to use the tools that I have to do the Ratzon Hashem. But anything that's beyond my control, other people's decisions, and the ramifications of those choices, from my perspective, outside of their own bechira, this is Hashem. This is Hashem's master plan unfolding. And then I have to choose how to respond to that. And how I choose to respond to that is going to be reflective of where I am in relation to this consciousness of Bittul, which is the ultimate consciousness that's supposed to sit at the core of what it means to be a Jewish person. Is this sense of Hineini, is this sense of showing up to be used, to be a witness to something that's so far beyond me as an individual, us as individuals, even our nation as an individual people, our generation as an individual generation. It touches the point of infinity. Hineini, I'm here for that. I don't get mired into this Gilgal, into this particular moment in time. Hashem Hineini. Now I'm going to do my best, given my own bechira, and my own ishtadlus, and my own efforts. But ultimately, Hashem, I want you to know this is not about me. This is about you and what you deem fit. And just like Klal Yisrael in the Midbar, who were ready at any moment, when the cloud lifted, to pack everything up and travel even without knowing where they're going, with the Amunah and Bitachon that they were being guided, each and every member of Klal Yisrael is expected to do the same. Because we know from the Svar Makdoshim, V'asu li mikdash v'shachanti b'soicham, Hashem says, they shall make for me a sanctuary and I will dwell within them. And of course, grammatically, it doesn't make sense, because it should say b'soichai, I will dwell within it, but instead it says, I will dwell within them. That doesn't make sense, because Mishkan is singular. And so it doesn't make sense then to say, and I will dwell within them. We didn't speak about multiple Mishkans. It says, V'asu li mikdash, they shall make for me a mikdash. So it should say, V'shachanti b'soichai. But everybody knows that the Svar Makdoshim say, the Al Shech HaKadosh, others, b'soichai lo nemar ela b'soicham. Because what it means to say is that each and every one of us is expected to build a Mishkan in our own heart. Like that famous song, Bilvavi Mishkan Evne. I want to create for Hashem a dwelling place in my own life, in the desert of my own experience, along my own journeys. Mishkan Hashem Hema, that we are the Mishkan of Hashem. And just like the collective nation was ready at a moment's notice to pack up that Mishkan, which represents the vessel in which Hashem dwells in our collective experience, and to move it from one place to the other, which means to say, to shift energy and to say, okay, now I'm doing this avodah. No, now something else. Now I have to do something else. Now I'm going to pursue this vision. That doesn't seem to be working out. There's a new opportunity. Okay, pivot. Now I'm doing this. That ability on the collective scale of all of Am Yisrael, which was the prototypical Jewish collective in the Midbar, is supposed to be reenacted in all of our lives. When the cloud lifts, we move. When the cloud settles, we stay. That's called Ratzah V'Shoiv. That's called running and returning. And this is the secret of Shoiv, right? This is the secret of that incredible revelation of Rabbi Nachman of Breslov, Zchus Yagen Aleinu, in the 6th lesson in Likutei Moharan, where the Rebbe reveals this concept of being a baki b'shoiv, an expert in settling. Because the pasuk says that the angels were running and returning, ratzeh v'shoiv, and the Rebbe says all of us have this experience in life where sometimes we're running and we're succeeding and we're accessing and attaining and we're being successful. And that's the days of life, and that's the summers of life, and that's the moments of elevation, the mountains of life. But all of us also have moments where we settle, and that's the nights of life, and the winters of life, and the valleys of life. And all of life is a composite of all of these different times, because the human being is an olam shalem, right? Each one of us is an olam katan. So within our own inner world, our days and nights, summers and winters, mountains and valleys. And the Rebbe teaches that the same way that when things are going well, a person needs to be a baki b'ratzai, an expert in running, which means to say that a person needs to be able to know that there's always higher madrigas to reach, and I can't become complacent, and I can't become haughty and arrogant to think that I'm already there, because the levels are infinite. There's so much more to know. There's so much more to learn. There's so much more to daven. There's so many higher madrigas in every category of serving Hashem that I could work on and be even more tahar and even more kadosh. By the same token, says Rabbi Nachman, a person needs to know the secret of baki b'shoiv, of being an expert in navigating those moments of lack of connection, lack of desire, emotional numbness, apathy, disinterest, dejection, discouragement. A person needs to be able to handle that. And a person needs to know in those moments, Hashem is here with me in this. What is it that enables a person to do that? A person whose service of Hashem was not really about Hashem, but it was about themselves. And it was about their own projects and their own projected vision of what success looks like, and wanting to reach that madrega and accomplish this amount of learning, and that a person expects that their davening should be on a certain level, that their shmiras hamitzvah should be on a certain level, but it was really about them. So when inevitably the human experience drags us down into the dark, because that's what the human experience is. Now again, every person, it'll be adjusted, the ups and downs, to where that person's nekudas habachira is. Obviously, it's not universally true, but there are always ups and downs. Ein sadik ba'aretz asher yaseh tov v'leyachta. As we know, there's no perfectly righteous person who only does good and never slips. And like Reb Tzaddik, which we mentioned in the past in shiurim, tells us that Moshe Rabbeinu knew that he was going to die because lo yuchal lotzis v'lavai, on his madrega, he was no longer going up and down. He was no longer, again, on his madrega, he was no longer experiencing aliyos and yerida, so that he knew he was dead, because to be alive in this world means to be caught in the struggle between the aleph and the dam, adam, right? The aleph of elokus, of godliness, and the dam of the flesh. To be stuck in the tension between Adam ule Elyon, where we embody it Tselem Elokim, but on the other hand, we're Afar min Adama. When that inevitably happens, a person whose whole motivation was buried in the locus of their own center, of their own personhood, of their own identity, they'll fall apart entirely. They're not able to handle and to surf that wave and to pivot and to roll with the punches and to go with the flow and all other similar kinds of turns of phrase, that they're not able to do that. They fall apart entirely. because it was their way or the highway. There was no other way. There wasn't even a highway. It was their way or bust. Because it was all about their vision. But when a person is genuinely working on behalf of Hashem in the world, that's called Hineini consciousness. When a person is really not in it for their own prestige, and a person's really not in it for their own sense of accomplishment, but a person genuinely is burning with yearning and desire and idealism and motivation and ambition, ach v'rak, because ta'ir eretz michveidecha, because all we want is that the only true reality, which is the Ein Sof, which is the infinite one, which is Ein Od Milvado, should be revealed so that every single human being could have peace. So that every single human being could have consciousness, could have everything that they need. That people can stop suffering, and that all of existence could reveal the godliness that it contains. A person like that, it was never up to them as to how successful they'll appear to be or how unsuccessful they'll appear to be, because their job is to do their best given the tools that they have, but at a moment's notice they're ready to step into a new avodah. Doesn't matter how aligned or misaligned they think that it is with their own vision of progress, because it was never about their own vision of progress. It was really about Hashem. And again, assuming that it's out of their control, and all of a sudden just something happens, or a cluster of things happen where their circumstances change, and that affects their mood, or they have a spiritual yerida out of nowhere, and all of a sudden they find themselves in the dark. This is the premise of Rabbi Nachman's teaching of Baki B'Shoiv. They know how to be an expert in returning, to say, oh, okay, the cloud of Hashem's presence lifted off of my inner Mishkan, no problem, let's fold the thing up and we'll carry it somewhere else. Wherever I'm needed, that's where I'll be. And this is why the beginning of that teaching of the Likutei Torah Vav begins with humility, about what it means to work on behalf of Hashem, not for the purpose of what Rabbi Nachman calls kvoid atzmai or kvoid malachim, where a person is trying to attain this worldly honor, but a person's whole intention is to reflect the kvoid eliki, is to work on behalf of Hashem. That's it. That's a person's only motivation. That's all that the person wants. That's the way the teaching begins. And then it goes into teaching about tshuva, that's the essence of tshuva, is to be able to hear a person's own self being embarrassed, and yidam yishtak, to remain silent. Another indicator, right, that it's not really about their own ego or their own sense of identity, but because they don't have that sense of self in the same way, they don't feel personally threatened. It was never really about them. It's all about Hashem, and Hashem will do with the world what He sees fit. About such a person, we can speak about the concept of Baki B'Shoiv, of being able to go with the flow, being able to recognize that, again, even though we're not in the midbar anymore, and we don't have the clear sign of the Shekhinah descending or ascending, guiding us in the daytime, a pillar of fire at night. The point is, all of life and the circumstances that dictate to us what our reality will or won't be, for all intents and purposes on a personal level, that is our cloud of smoke, or our pillar rather of cloud, and our pillar of fire. Those are the bumpers, go bowling. Those are the bumper, those are the guardrails. Circumstances out of our control. In Shidduchim, the girl says no. It's out of my control. I can't convince the girl to say yes, right? So then I have two choices now. If it was all about me and my plan, and I really thought this was the one, I fall apart. But if my whole identity on this planet is to do what I can do, ach v'rak for HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and I'm genuinely trying my best, and Baki B'Shoiv means, Hashem, okay, on to the next one. Difficult and painful as it is, this is the birur. Right? This is where a person needs to be mevarer within themselves. What do I want? Why and for whom? You sit with a donor and have a really good meeting. And looks like, okay, the door opened. And then you write up a proposal and you send it and it gets rejected out of hand. So I thought that I needed that funding. Right? I mean, I thought that this was the right next move. Okay, but who's the project for? The project's for Hashem? So Hashem thinks otherwise. I can't make choices on behalf of other people. But the choices that other people are making is, from my perspective, I have to perceive it to be mamish Hashem guiding my life in the way that my life needs to be guided, without me sort of, imprinting my own stuff on it. It's just al pi Hashem yachnu, al pi Hashem yiso. So this is a really good litmus test as to our response. Now again, there are levels and levels of this. Every person's human. Of course, at the end of the day, I have a name. I have an identity. I have a consciousness. I have my own unique sense of self. So obviously, I'm going to feel things on a personal level. There's no question. Only great tzaddik and mamish, didn't interpret, like weren't affected in any way, shape, or form. Obviously, we're not on that madriga, most of us. But there are levels and levels and levels of this. And the closer a person is to this ultimate madrega of Hineini consciousness, then the easier it is to be able to roll with the punches of life. Because emuna really, if it's not just lip service, emuna has to translate into the way that we react and respond to the lived experience of our humanity, chaya yom yom. Otherwise, it's just words. And we're told by the Mishnah already, Emar ma'at v'aseh harbe. Lo yalimru ha'ikr. The main thing is not to talk the talk. Ela ha'maisa. Bottom line is, when it comes down to it, do you believe in Hashem or not? Right? Bottom line is, when it comes down to it, is this for you or is this for him? Is this for him or is this for you? And the indicator is how well a person's able to navigate the ups and the downs, and what context a person's able to put their own personal circumstances into. That's what we're discussing here. Going back inside, v'yodea, a person knows, sheyesh la'Hashem yisbarach drachim rabim lahanig ba'olam v'hu muchen l'chol asher yishtalech, and the person says, Hashem Hineini, I'm here for it all. I'm here for it all. I'll go wherever I'm sent because I really believe that I'm here for you, and that's it. I'm only here for you. Imagine if a person could have that in mind, let's say not every minute of every day, just every morning. A person really, really starts every day of their short life. We should all live long to 120, but it's very short. A person begins every day with this level of consciousness, reminding themselves, Hashem, I'm here for you. And everything I'm going to endeavor to do today is not for me. It's for you. That's called Rabba Emunasecha. Shechazarta binishmasi. I recognize you gave me my soul, which we say in Moda'ani. But we should say Moda'ani consciously, so it actually means something in the morning when we wake up. We say Moda'ani lefanecha melech chai v'kayim shechazarta binishmasi. You gave me back my soul because Rabba Emunasecha, because your faithfulness in me, your trust in me, to have sent me here again, to continue my mission from yesterday, and that day from the day before, and that day from the day before, and that week from the week before, and that year from the year before, and that decade from the decade before, all the way back to when my neshama first came into a body and emerged into this world, is because you sent me here. Shlucha shel Adam k'moisai. You sent me here as your representative on this planet. I don't have any other sense of identity. Life has no other purpose. It's you, and only you. Hashamayim shamayim l'Hashem. The Shemayim is already paradise. Via aretz nasam l'vnei adam. You gave us this world to turn it into paradise. That's it. That's it. No other motivation, no other ambition. I don't need anything else or want anything else. You, and only you. And that's if a person can start their day like that. Imagine if a person could be conscious of that throughout their day. Again, irrespective of whether a person's privileged enough to be involved the whole day directly with Emunah, or a person's at the office, or there's relationship stuff, or dating, right? Or whatever stage or phase a person's at. A person constantly reminds themselves of this truth. I'm here for him. I'm here for him. All this is for him. There is nothing else but him. That's my whole goal. Is to collapse all of those illusory walls, like the Baal Shem Tov's mashal of the king who puts all those barriers around the treasure, but they're all ba'achizas einayim. They don't really exist. I'm here to just teach people how to look past the barriers and to find Hashem's presence in everything, in the good things, in the negative things, in everything. I'm ready to go wherever I'm being sent. Even though that might mean that I need to pack up this tent, I need to pack up this mishkan, I need to move it somewhere else, and now there's a new avodah. Okay, now there's a new avodah. Seamlessly though, without a, it's this week's parsha, right? That inyan of Vayetze. To go from one situation of sitting and learning in Yeshiva Shem Ve'ever, Yaakov Ishtam Yoshev Alim, into a radically new environment by Lavan, working, wages, shepherding. Yaakov Avinu he's able to make that transition seamlessly. That's the inyan of Yaakov Avinu. The Ramzu Zen, he brings a beautiful remez b'mashem avakshim Hashem is barach ksiva v'chasima toiva. In the beginning of the new year, which is sort of the beginning of the day from the standpoint of the year, in terms of grounding our consciousness in the ultimate truth and what we're trying to accomplish. A Jew says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, ksiva v'chasima toiva. It should be a good writing and a good sealing. Sheyehudi ena oises aksiva levadoi. Because it isn't Ribbon Shalom here. I'm going to do the writing. I'm going to dictate to you, Hashem, how my life should look, and I just need you to sign off on it. But it's really my stuff. It's really what I want, and I'm just asking you to approve it. That would be chasima toiva. Lahatziv mishaelus abakashus v'tochnios v'etzainis v'sheifas, to go ahead and to institute the writing out of a person's desires and with their requests and their own, sort of programs that they're creating in their head for what their year should look like, and their own desires and their own ambitions. Well, maybe Hashem is baruch sheyaseh chasima al kol ma shekasa. And then he brings it to Hashem and says, Hashem, just sign on the dotted line, just give me the funding. But it's really my project. No. The proper consciousness is Elamegish la Hashem is baruch daf chalak. A Jew comes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu with a blank paper, muchan, ready, so that sheyasu Hashem Yisbarach, so that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should give that person heinas aksiva v'heinas achasima. Both, not just the sealing of it, the ksiva and the chasima. Hashem, I don't just want you to sign off, I want you to do the writing too. I'm just gechomer b'yad hayotzer. Hineini, Hashem. You write the script and you sign off on it. Not that I'll write the script and then I'll bring it to you for funding. It's not about what I want, it's about what you want. So yes, again, every person will mediate the Ratzon Hashem through our own ishtadlus, through our own bechira, through the best of what our brain can accomplish in terms of thinking, the best of what our heart can accomplish in terms of feeling, and then the bringing together of the two, and v'yadata hayoim hashivaysa elevavecha, to think and then to bring it down into our heart. Vadai shekain. Obviously, Hashem is not going to do the thinking for us. He wants us to do the best that we can. But that meeting point between our own bechira and that which is beyond our bechira, that delicate dance between our own hishtadlus and ultimately what Hashem causes to unfold in our lives, that's just something else. That's where, for a person who's Kvod Elokim oriented, who lives their whole life with this consciousness, that this is their only desire, like we said, is Ta'ir Eretz Michvedecha, is for the whole earth to be illuminated with Hashem's presence, that all we want is Geula, not just for ourselves or for our nation, for the whole existence. The existence is, like Rav Kook describes, like a trapped lion that's roaring to be free, and all we want is to witness that freedom, La'akma Shchinta Me'afra, to redeem the Shechina from her prison, and to bring her finally back into the embrace of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, to bring together body and soul, and to allow the world to be rendered anew as a result of the proliferation of spiritual energy and the upgrade of our universal collective consciousness, both humanity and then its impact on every other strata of existence. When a person has that consciousness, in that space between a person's own consciousness, which is a person's own ishtadlus, a person's own bechira, their own choice, and then circumstances that are unfolding around them that they don't have any control over, this becomes the aspect of the Gemara which, describing a husband and a wife, says ish v'isha zacha shchina shriya b'neihem. If a husband and wife merit, then the Shechina is revealed beineihem. It's a very precise lashon, and it means many things. In the space between them. Interpreted more collectively with all of Klal Yisrael being the Isha, and then the husband, Ish, being Hashem, it is in the space between our own very real choices that we make in this life, our own plans and our own thoughts and our own feelings and our own desires. So between that, it's in the space between that, which is very real and necessary, and then life as it unfolds around us, irrespective of our own plan, that if we have those two things, and we see our own motivation in the context of the larger, grander plan, then the Shechina Shriya B'neihem. Then we're able to manifest HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence in this lowly world. What a wonder to be a part of that, to be a light worker, to be mamish on the team of the redemption. So says Rav Kluger, after this introduction, Yuvan b'yoyser avodas nishmas David HaMelech. Now we can understand the avodah of what he calls David HaMelech's souls. Bechinas Levana, moon people, like I describe in my book, The Story of Our Lives, chapter 17 or so. Moon people. People who are very sensitive and who don't have a perfect emotional equilibrium, all the time, like the sun, which is constantly shining the same, but they feel things deeply. And they're impacted. And they have ups and they have downs. And sometimes the cloud of the Shechina settles upon their inner Mishkan. Sometimes it lifts. Just like the moon waxes and wanes. Just like David HaMelech, the warrior poet. The person who has the most ecstatic spiritual experiences, and the person who on his madriga falls into darkness and hangs out in caves running away. You know why David HaMelech is called David HaMelech? Why David is the spiritual emblematization of the sphere of Malchus, which is the sovereignty of Hashem's presence on this planet, is specifically, and this is so deep, is specifically because it does not stay the same. If it stayed the same all along, I'd never know whose Malchus it really is. If it was always successful in the same way, so then there would be no indicator as to what the consciousness of behind that success is. But because the moon has its ups and its downs, it's time when it's more reflective of the sunlight and the time where the sunlight gets constricted. That's how we're able to know the Baki B'Shoiv, the expert of knowing how to stay okay and staying connected, being able to surf those waves, being able to dance in the rain, being able to let go and let God. And to say, Hashem, it's what you want, not what I want. And I'm here for that journey. And I'll continue. Nothing changes. You open a door, you close a door, it's all the same to me. Hishtavos, equanimity. The consciousness of Shivisi Hashem Lenegdi Samid, what the Ma'arinayim explains, that the name Yud Kei Vav Kei is the Chesed of Hashem, Lenegdi is the Shem Elokim, because it's the oppositional force, it's the force of din, of severity, of harsh judgment, of Gevura, that pushes a person back from being able to attain what they set out to attain. And David HaMelech, in Tehillim, David, the Melech, who knows what it means to shine, but also what it means to shrink into oblivion and to bounce back. David HaMelech says, Shivisi Yud Kei Vav Kei Lenegdi Samid. It was all the same to me. Whether it was Yud Kei Vav Kei, I sang to Hashem. Ba'Hashem Ahalal Davar. Whether it was Lenegdi, I also sang to Hashem. Be'elekim Ahalal Davar. Another pasuk in Tehillim. Or like the Gemara tells us, based on yet a third pasuk, Chesed u'mishpat ashira. David HaMelech knew how to sing to Hashem irrespective of whether things were going well, in accordance with his own desire and plan, or whether the opposite. Because it was never about him. Because David HaMelech didn't have a sense of self, because he was supposed to be a stillborn. Because Malchus les l'megar meklum. Malchus has no light of its own. It's the moon that really has no light other than the light that comes from the Shemesh. That's what Klal Yisrael are supposed to be. That's what it means. Hashem didn't choose Klal Yisrael because we're so impressive and successful and awesome. Hashem chose us because we're moon people. Because we're Baishanim. Because there's this deep Jewish anxiety that knows that we're not worthy. That knows that we didn't come into this world for ourselves. We are a nefel, we're a stillborn people. None of our imahos, our four mothers, actually four mothers, right, in a literal sense, they couldn't give birth. They were akaros. And Rabbi Tzaddik explains, because Klal Yisrael's whole foundation is la'achar yush. We are already hopeless. It's not that Sarah was having complications. She could not give birth. It was impossible for Sarah to give birth. And then she's born after Yish. Yitzchak is born after Yish. Yitzchak is the Indian of that laughter. Because Yitzchak is the letters Ketz Chai, where there is no life, meaning there is no sense of self. That's the joke. That's the laughter. Is that Hashem? It was always you. It was you before. Atahu shaloi nivra olam. Atahu misha nivra olam. Atu ba'olam hazeh. Atu la'olam haba. It was your plan the whole time. Sure, I'm here to do the best that I can, to filter with my own sense of self, which Hashem wants us to have, like we said, through my mind, through my heart, to figure out how I can best be of service. But ultimately, Hashem, Ketz Chai, Yitzchak, I wasn't supposed to be born in the first place. David HaMelech, who's born a nefel, supposed to be a stillborn, he doesn't have any years to his life. Adam Rishon has to give David HaMelech some years. When a person has that consciousness, then you're a David HaMelech person. You're a moon person. Sometimes you'll feel full, and then you'll praise Hashem out of the deepest gratitude. And sometimes we'll shrink down into a tiny sliver and even beyond that. And we'll be okay with that too. Because we'll be able to recognize, Hashem, it was never about me. Al pi Hashem yachnu, al pi Hashem yisa'u. Hashem, I travel and I set up camp not based on what I want, based on what you want. And if this is what's happening in my life, again, assuming that it's beyond my control, because that's what it means, that's Hashem who's guiding my life, then you know something, Hashem? Baki b'shoiv. I'm an expert at that stage of the journey called returning. I'm okay. I'll sit here and I'll stay. And I don't give up, because it was never about my own personal ambition. I'm here to do the best that I can, because it's not about me. It's about your malchus. It's about revealing to the world that ein oid milvadoi, that there is no me. It's you. That Hineini. I was always ever here to do your bidding, not to demand that you do mine. So therefore, and then a person's willing to change on a dime. Circumstances shift. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. I'm not rigid. Like the Gemara in Taina says, a person should always be malleable, flexible like a reed. And not rigid like a cedar tree. And the Gemara explains, because a cedar tree that's rigid means a person who's in it for their own purposes, comes along a strong wind, boom, it snaps and the whole thing falls apart. But a reed, because it's flexible, because it's humble, because it's the aspect of David HaMelech who wasn't supposed to be alive in the first place, doesn't show up with a sense of self. The aspect of Yitzchak, Kates Chai, the end of all life, the energy of Gevura, who was not supposed to be born at all because Sarah couldn't give birth, who's able to laugh at the world, who's able to go with the flow. Says the Gemara, all the winds in the world could blow upon it, and it will flap along with the wind. It will shape shift, but it will stay rooted in the ground. Shisulim beveis Hashem, planted firmly in the base Hashem. Come what may, Hashem, I'm yours. I'm not going anywhere. Come what may, I know what my job in this world is, what my mission is. And that's to try my best to align myself with you and what your will is, as expressed in the Torah, as manifest in all of nature and reality, and as communicated through my own personal circumstances, limitations, challenges, successes, achievements, obstacles, failures. Every day I could be doing something else. People can't understand this. A project failed. How do you get out of bed the next morning? Because it wasn't my project. It wasn't for me. I didn't put my whole sense of identity onto it. I don't have a sense of identity. I'm here to do the best that I can. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, it's still working out. Because it didn't work out the way I wanted it, but it's working out the way that he wanted it. And that was the whole point to begin with. Because when things aren't going my way, they're going his way. And I'd rather them go his way. Because my way was only supposed to be, because that's the best that I could come up with, that I thought would be aligned with his way. He wanted something else. Baki b'shoiv, to be an expert. Koyach hasaga, this consciousness shezachu la etmol, that I had yesterday, ena klum lemachar, it means nothing for tomorrow. Shori az nachayna lehem avoida acheres Hashem yisbarach mevaksha achshav. It could be that today something else came up. Last night I had a whole plan for the way that my day was supposed to go today, and it didn't quite unfold that way. That's fine. I'm ready to shift on a dime. I'm ready to go along with that flow, that aspect of David HaMelech. Chesed u'mishpat hashira b'Hashem halal davar, b'elikim halal davar, shivisi havaya l'negdi summit. It's all the same to me. V'yesh lahem hanemonos lasis atas masha achshav ratzu lefanev yizbarach. This nemonos, this partnership, this showing up with the energy of Hineini, this energy of ani avdecha, not only am I your servant, ben amasecha. I was never free to begin with. I don't have my own ambition. I don't have my own plan. I have nothing. I am nothing. I have you and only you. And my whole avoid in the world is just to reveal that. That's all I want. That's all I want. When a person can get into that consciousness and to show up in Hisbodedus on this level, without a whole laundry list of things that I want, that's ksiva, and then I'm asking Hashem to chasima, to sign on it. But to show up with a blank paper and to hand it to Hashem, say, Hashem, Hineini, please, ksiva v'chasima toiva. You write down what you think is needed, what you know is needed, and you sign it, and then I'll take it and run with it. To be mevarer and to clarify this nekuda, what do I want? And just to ask yourself and myself that question again and again. What do I want? Or another form of the question, who is this for? When it really comes down to it, who is this for? This is an extremely powerful level of the Hisbodedus that we've not really gotten to yet, and now we're learning this. It's a whole different level. Mamish, a whole different level of showing up, not with the things that I'm asking for, but to give it over to Hashem, this blank sheet of paper, and to be ready to carry the malchus of Hashem and to reveal it, both in the ups and in the downs, and to be a baki beratzo when things are going well, but also a baki b'shayv. Hashem should help us do this work. Like we said, it's not just enough to learn about it. The ikr is to do it. That's the ikr, and to become people who live like this. Hashem should bless us to be humble people, to be bittul people, to be people who are yearning, to be people who mamish are using every minute of life to recognize Hashem's presence and to do the best that they can to spread that in the world. We need more people like that. So we should all be successful, and we're all being successful. And what a privilege to learn together. Thank you everybody for joining. Wonderful, wonderful to learn with you as always. I'm wishing you an amazing, phenomenal rest of your day. Be'ezras Hashem Yisbarach. Thank you so much. וקיים על כל נשימה שעל